Hey, you guys, how are you this evening? I hope all are well. I hope and pray actually everyone is doing well, and I hope and pray that everyone is getting their reading in. The book of Ezekiel has been a humdinger. It's been a very, very hard book to read and to take in during this time. I think just during this time of our culture, it just makes it a very hard read. So today, our reading found us in Ezekiel 36:1 through 47:12. And I think tomorrow I am just going to start with, I'll finish up Ezekiel and begin in the book of Daniel. Tomorrow we don't have that much reading tomorrow. It's exciting. It's very exciting. Tomorrow we only have 8 chapters of the book of Daniel to read. Yay! So tomorrow it's kind of like a little bit of a break with only 8 chapters to read. Now today there was a lot going on in the book of Ezekiel. A lot going on. Now we start in chapter 36, and the house of Israel greatly profaned the name of the Lord, and he is not happy about it. And the Lord has concern for his holy name. He has great concern for his holy name. And the Lord himself will vindicate his own holy name. He deposits his spirit, in men, which causes men to walk in his statutes. And that can be found in chapter 36. In chapter 37, the story of the dry bones is where we land today. And the dry bones are the whole house of Israel. The dry bones are the whole house of Israel. And they and their children and their children's children sentence was mentioned in this portion of the text. Now, I want us to circle back to that phrase, they and their children and their children's children. Now, moving on to chapter 38, it's a prophecy against Gog, and there was mention of an earthquake in this particular chapter. The Lord promises to restore Israel. Although we see these prophecies over and over again in the book of Jeremiah and the book of Ezekiel, we also see promises of restoration. This is a distinct and welcomed plan of the Lord. He always promises restoration. Chapter 40. The Lord places in Ezekiel in such a place where he sees a vision, which the Lord would like Ezekiel to declare this vision to the house of Israel. And this vision is the restored temple. And so it's not visions of a restored temple, but it's a vision of the new temple. And this is in the 25th year of exile. Now remember, the exile was due to last 70 years. So this isn't even halfway in the midst of the exile. But chapter 40 lets us know that these things are happening in regards to Ezekiel in the 25th year of the exile period. Chapter 41, the holy place and the inner temple is also part of this vision which Ezekiel has. The chambers and all of it. And in chapter 43, Ezekiel saw the vision of the glory of the Lord filling the temple, and the law of the temple was shared with Ezekiel, and so that he could share this information with the house of Israel. The Lord always wants to give his people hope. He always wants to give his people hope of restoration, and so therefore he's like, this is the message that I want you to take to the house of Israel. There will be a new temple. And so the Lord also gives Ezekiel a vision of the ordinances and the altar, and the ordinances in the altar. Now, one thing I noticed in my reading today is that the phrase, I will be their God and they will be my people, occurs 5 times in the book of Ezekiel. That particular phrase, I will be their God and they will be my people. So, do I have another note up there? I'm looking at my journal notes that I took today. And let's just flip through here and see if I recall anything else that I wanted to share with you guys. So the Lord, he allows Ezekiel to see this vision of this new temple. And then he breaks out into a whole recount of the law of the temple. And he goes on, I'm going to say a tirade, but it's the Lord, so it was not a tirade. But he goes on a reteaching, so they can relearn, so it can be reestablished in the way that it was before. And so he goes on to share this information with Ezekiel, so he can share this information with the people. So when the new temple is built, then they will know how to properly attend to it, and so on and so forth. So he talks about the holy district, all the gates and the water flowing, but it's just interesting to me that right here in the book of Ezekiel, we almost have another portion of Leviticus where the Lord is explaining how the Levitical priests and so on and so forth are supposed to take care of the temple. So I wanted to circle back to the phrase, they and their children and their children's children. I want to circle back to that phrase because I think that we are under the impression when our children are grown and going about their own business, I think that somehow we are under the impression that we are not responsible for these children. But the truth of the matter is the Lord holds us responsible for our children. And if they go wayward, the Lord also holds us responsible for their waywardness, because it is our job to teach them the word so they can have it in their heart. So if at some point in time we fail as adults and we don't teach them in the early years, we have to pray in regards to the Lord to see how we may teach them in their later years. But it is ultimately the responsibility of the parent to make sure that their children know the Lord. And so that's just a little tidbit of information I have for us, because I do think that we are under the impression that once that child turns 18 or 21, that we're off the hook and they are completely responsible for themselves. They are held accountable for themselves, yes. And each person is held accountable for his or her own salvation, yes. But as parents, we are also held accountable for teaching them the love and the law of the Lord. This is Sonia signing out. I hope and pray you have a blessed day, evening in the Lord.